Hi everyone, Diablo 4 Season 2 is in full swing, and last night we had a huge Maxroll meeting talking about all the updates and of course our tier lists. So previously we had crafted those tier lists based on the patch notes, and there was no PTR, there was no way to really predict all the little details of what was actually going to happen because of this massive shift in the overall game balance, the crit reworks, the resistances and all that stuff. But we have gone through all of our tier lists here, talking about the leveling builds, endgame builds, speed farming builds, and unique items. And also, if you haven't seen that yet, we also have the new Nightmare Dungeon tier list. So we have all of these here up on Maxroll, and they have all been fully updated with like the latest information, basically. So Nightmare Dungeon tier lists, if you are looking for what you want to farm, which dungeons you prefer, then we have ranked by solo XP and by glyph leveling. So depending on what is your objective, if you want to just get to level 100 or if you want to just like finish your glyphs, you can look at those two different lists here. So we have collected a bit of data and tried to figure out which ones are those that you want to run. Now, more interestingly, the Endgame Builds Tier List, this is like the biggest update here. We have had a major shift in the power between classes, in particular Barbarians. So they have moved up quite a lot here. They're basically dominating S tier with the one exception, the Ball Lightning Sorcerer. Ball Lightning Sorcerer is just completely cracked right now, but outside of that, Barbarian is probably the overall best class right now. Basically every core skill they have besides Rend is extremely strong, and they're just like absolutely destroying the game. They're like invincible, and they do like, you know, one shots on Uber Duriel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they're looking really solid. I've also played some Barb already, and I can just confirm this. It looks amazing for this class. But in general, that doesn't mean that the other classes are really terrible. Every class has really strong builds. As you can see here in S tier, we have also some Dura builds, some Rogue builds. There's also Necro there. So we have everything up there basically for all of the classes. And there's generally not really a big issue between choosing like any of those classes in S tier or even A tier. Like even B tier builds right now are actually really strong because of how easy the game has become with Season 2. The power level in general is very high, and even like the weakest builds can clear basically all the content. They can do Lilith, they can do tier 100 even if you try. So it's not really such a point of can you beat the game or not? It's more like how fast are you going to be? And in this case, the higher ranked builds here are just doing the job better. So we have done the endgame builds tier list. Outside of the Barbarians moving up, we have also like moved down a few builds here a little bit. So Rogue has lost a bit here. For example, we put Rapid Fire a bit down. Yeah, we put like some of the Barb builds down here that didn't really work out so well. Rend and Leapquake, for example. But you see here, all of these arrows we have indicating that we moved up a lot of things. So in general, there's a really large S tier, as you can see. As I mentioned, because the game is so easy, because there's not really like anything to really measure the power level of builds anymore. Like tier 100s is simply too easy of a Nightmare Dungeon tier for most of these builds, so that you can't really find the minuscule differences. But this is what we got for now. So this is why we have the S tier so large, where usually we have relatively few builds in there to kind of like show what is clearly above the rest. But this doesn't exist right now. This is even more amplified in the speed farming tier list. So you see here we have a massive S tier because basically vampire powers make it so that most builds just kind of like one-shot the entire screen of Helmancy from time to time. And other than that, you just need high mobility and maybe a bit of boss damage, or you know, maybe just some good AoE clear. And a lot of builds can actually do that quite easily. So as long as you include all of the mobility possible, you see here there's a lot of overlap with the normal endgame builds tier list, but this one is more specialized for like, you know, Hell Tides, Blood Harvest, these kind of types of content here. And the overall endgame tier list is, you know, the entire progression basically from 50 to 100, killing bosses, doing Nightmare Dungeons, doing Hell Tides, whatever. So there is a bit of a difference here. So some builds can do everything pretty well, and some builds are really good at just going fast, but they might have not the damage to just do tier 100s, or they don't have the damage to really blast down bosses, for example. So those are the differences here. But in general, we also moved up a lot of things because of this extremely high power level right now in Season 2. And here is the leveling builds tier list. So this is the 1 to 50 experience. where we've also done a few shifts here, especially Barb is yeah, much better than we anticipated. So again, Upheaval moved up, Hoda moved up, for example. These are actually pretty decent leveling builds. And yeah, a few other shifts that we have done here. We've moved up Penshot. So this is like the S tier now. In general, Bloodsurge Necro is completely untouchable when it comes to leveling. And then, yeah, a bunch of Rogue, a bunch of Zorg, and Druids still kind of remain down here. The only reason how Druids can really feel good in leveling is when you find a good aspect for one of your main skills, like if you find a Shockwave, or you find like the Tornado Seeking aspect or something like that. Then Druids are actually fine, but yeah, without anything, if you just have Codex powers, etc., they're not really that great. But they're the only class that are just somewhat slow in the early game, but they really pop off later. So as you see here, there's a bunch of Druid builds in S tier. They have here also A tier. So Druid in general has really good builds overall, and I would probably rank them the second best class after the Barb overall. So yeah, this is kind of like my expectation here right now. And in general, as I mentioned, all of the classes have really good builds. So if you want to take a closer look at our tier list, I have them all linked down in the description. These are the Maxroll tier lists here. So I showed them off earlier. We have the overview here. You can also bookmark them because we're never going to change those links. So this is what we use from season to season to update our build ranking. We've also taken a look at the unique items tier list. So you see this here, we have moved a lot of stuff up and down just based on how popular and how used some of those items are. So this is mostly what this represents here. It basically gives you a bit of an idea of which items to keep in case that you find one of them and you're not really sure. So that you know, okay, like, you know, these S tier and A tier uniques are usually very universally used, or they're like really strong on like a really good build. And some of them just like fit into many builds. They can be used in some cases. So there's yeah, a lot of different possibilities, but some of them are definitely really weak. So we have the F tier down here that is basically never useful under almost any circumstance. Then D tier almost the same, and then kind of like it moves up like this to like the universally like most powerful uniques, like the Shaco here, for example. Like basically any build that is not a Druid would want this. And you know, other things like Grandfather, Doombringer, etc. Most of these Uber uniques are pretty good. And then we have a bunch of like these class defining uniques like Lidless Wall. There's like Condemnation. So these are also like very universal items. So they're up here. So in case you're wondering, those unique items, we rank them mostly by the popularity and by how often they appear in builds. We also ranked the new uniques here. I just see that they're actually not on the list right now, but we're gonna fix that. So maybe by the time the video goes up, they're already there. And most of them in general are pretty good. So this is kind of what I can say. In any case, hope you enjoyed this update here. I hope that you're enjoying season 2. So make sure to check out our tier list. Make sure to check out our guides. You can just always click on these here. You open the build guide. If you're wondering, like if you want to look for a new build, you can check them out here. And hope that you have a blast in season 2. Hope you liked this video, and see you guys next time.